This is NDTV. And you're watching Ndtv-Hindu.
Karunanidhi, the chief of the DMK, started his career as a scriptwriter in Tamil cinema, and we all know he was successful at that. So it seems that over the last few days, the 86-year-old went back to what he does best: write a script in which his 6 ministers played heroes and the Congress the villain, at least they were projected so. And how well the script has worked out. The Congress has now asked for 1 day's time from the DMK. Pranab Mukherjee, the Congress's troubleshooter, has asked the 6 ministers camping at MK Argiri's house in New Delhi to hold on before they put their papers in. And the drama between the Congress and the DMK played out live on national and regional television, minute by minute being updated. And watching all of it closely must be Jayalalitha, who perhaps could be a little disappointed that the patch-up is now on the cards between her rivals. Good evening, I'm Radhika Iyer, and on the show tonight, we discuss Karunanidhi's script in the DMK Congress saga, a hit or a flop, or was it Sonia Gandhi's script? Joining me live is Mr. S. Murari, a senior journalist who's seen several elections in Tamil Nadu, but will agree that the one coming up will be the most exciting one for all of us. All right, and also joining me live will be Mr. K. Balakrishnan from the CPM, a senior leader there. He, of course, will be joining us in the capacity, if I may put, sir, as an insider from the rival camp, the AIADMK-led alliance, to share with us their take on the Congress-DMK saga, rather drama. So, first up, the look at headlines now. Pranab Mukherjee reaches out to Karunanidhi in a patch-up bid, asking him to rethink the resignation of the ministers from the cabinet. 6 ministers of the DMK camping in Argiri's house in Delhi with their resignation letters. Ndtv-Hindu leading talks with the Congress on the compromise formula. Will the PMK sacrifice 3 seats to get the Congress back? Sources indicate that the Congress could get all 63 as asked for. But it is not all a numbers game. The Congress wants key DMK constituencies. Will it now tone down its demand and become more humble in the next 24 hours? Jayalalitha slaps a legal notice on the DMK's mouthpiece, Murasali and Kalinga TV, for carrying reports linking her to Hassan Ali. The PIL is filed in the Madras High Court asking for the election dates to be postponed. Let's also take a look at the national headlines. The Prime Minister takes full responsibility for CVC PJ Thomas's appointment, says it was an error of judgment. The Supreme Court rejects the Aruna Shanbag mercy killing plea. She's been a vegetative state for the last 35 years. 2 more maternal deaths at the government hospital in Jodhpur takes now the toll to 15. Fighting intensifies in pockets of Libya. Experts say the country is heading towards a long-drawn civil war. And of course, the big story nationally is finally Hassan Ali seems to have been detained and is likely to face an arrest. But will the sleuths lead in to that money trail which leads into millions of crores of rupees? Getting back to our big story here in Chennai and the state of Tamil Nadu. What a day of high drama. The Congress has now asked for 1 more day's time to work out a compromise formula to save the Congress-DMK marriage. And surely the attempt is not just from the Congress, it seems. The DMK too wants to keep the Congress on its side, and so negotiations are on as we speak in New Delhi. Ndtv-Hindu is representing the DMK in Delhi in the meetings with the Congress party. In an apparent patch-up exercise, Finance Minister Pranab Mukherjee today called the DMK chief M. Karunanidhi over the phone and urged him to reconsider the party's decision to withdraw its ministers from the UPA government. As of now, there is no push or pressure from the DMK. They have maintained their stance. The 6 DMK union ministers in New Delhi were to meet with the Prime Minister Mr. Manmohan Singh at 6:30 this evening to submit their resignation letters. However, the political equivalent of the couple's counselling session was held in New Delhi this afternoon by Mr. Pranab Mukherjee, the troubleshooter as always, and the Congress in charge of Tamil Nadu, Ghulam Nabi Azad, meeting the DMK leaders, Dayanidhi Maran. Azad also said that the matter is not yet resolved just a few hours ago. And of course, we had MK Stalin, who came out about 2 hours ago speaking to the media here in New Delhi and looked suitably relieved.
Sir, is the alliance confirm Aisha, sir? Alliance confirm Aisha, Congress alliance irukka ipo?
இரண்டு முறை தமிழக முதல்வர் கலைஞர்களுடன் தொலைபேசியில் பேசியிருக்கிறார். இன்று ஒரு நாள் அவகாசம் கேட்டிருக்கிறார். எனவே மத்திய அமைச்சர்கள் ராஜினாமா செய்வது குறித்து நாளை உறுதி செய்யப்படும்.
அவகாசம் நீங்க கேட்டிருக்கீங்களா அவங்க கேட்டிருக்காங்க?
அவகாசம் கேட்டிருக்கிறாரு, நாளைக்கு தெரியும்.
நீங்க கேட்டீங்களா? அவங்க கேட்டிருக்காங்க. Thank you. Right, thank you. Sir, in English.
A smiling Stalin there, of course, who knows that the son of the DMK has not just yet set in. DMK MP Kanimuri, who also has been tight-lipped on this issue so far, has come out to speak, and she has said that there will be a clear picture only by tomorrow.
We'll have a better and clearer picture tomorrow.
We also heard that Pranab Mukherjee sir spoke to the DMK. So what exactly was the conversation about and what is?
We don't have to tell you about every conversation in detail. I think we'll know what's going on very clearly by tomorrow.
Perhaps she already knows what's likely to happen, but we, however, will have to wait till tomorrow when the final announcement will be made and whether they will actually make a compromise formula. So the conflict between the Congress and the DMK is not just over the number of seats the Congress will get from, it is over where the congressmen will contest from. The Congress knows that the DMK is in a weak position, and so they're bargaining hard and continue to do so even at this stage, knowing fully well that the DMK has had a severe loss of face in the 2G spectrum scam that broke out just ahead of the elections. So the Congress wants the Alandur constituency near Chennai, which of course is a bone of contention between the Congress and the DMK in Tamil Nadu. Alandur, of course, traditionally known to be the DMK stronghold, and now it seems that Congress's G.K. Vasan seems to think that the Congress wants that seat. Also, Ambasamudram in Tirunelveli district is another seat that the Congress has on its wish list. And a couple of other surprising seats, of course, will be asking for the seats belonging to current ministers in the state government. Geeta Jeevan, who belongs to Thoothukudi, and of course, Pungudi Allari Aruna, who belongs to Alangulam, respectively. Of course, these two constituencies being the DMK stronghold, but it seems that the Congress is now eyeing on these constituencies and more importantly asking for constituencies in southern Tamil Nadu, hoping that the presence of Rahul Gandhi in the last few years, particularly in districts like Madurai, Kanyakumari, Tirunelveli, would have strengthened the Congress right here in the southern state of Tamil Nadu. And so, understandably, MK Arigiri seems a little upset with that demand of the Congress party. We'll have to wait and see, of course, on how it pans out overnight. All right, joining me is Mr. S. Murari. Thank you very much, sir, as always, to join us and to share your perspective with us on the entire saga. We are, of course, calling it a script written by the famous scriptwriter M. Karunanidhi over the last, let's say, a few hours, because the Congress has not been so easy for the DMK when it came to seat sharing talks. We did see stalemate over the last few days. Would you also believe, or rather would you fail to believe, that this is a fight over just 3 seats? The DMK wanting to give 60, but the Congress wants 63?
No, there is more to it than meets here. Certainly not over 3 seats. In fact, the Congress sources say long-standing alliances don't break over a few seats.
Yes.
Definitely not. There is more to it. There have been hard bargaining behind the scenes. Of course, any of the demands, all the demands that the Congress has put forward in the initial round of talks, like seat sharing, coordination committee, and then number of seats started with 90 and then whittled down to 60, 63. All this, yes, hard bargaining, yes. But Congress, DMK has not conceded any of the demands. But you go to the beginning, started with the meeting between Sonia Gandhi and Karunanidhi, which was anything but warm. It was very cold. So the impression I get was that Congress was not keen on continuing the alliance with the DMK because of the spectrum scam and also the anti-incumbency factor and several other things like power cut, price rise and all that. The Congress felt that it would also impact on its own prospects if it went to the elections with the Congress.
Right.
With the DMK, I am sorry. So, somehow they wanted to wriggle out of it. At the same time, did not factor in what impact the withdrawal of support by the DMK will have at the center.
So is it that there are also indications now, Mr. Murari, that the PMK perhaps is playing into it? The PMK knows fully well, and we do know that particularly Anbumani Ramadas knows that it needs the Congress party. He of course would want an alliance with the Congress party, and so it seems from sources, it's not official yet, that the PMK is willing to sacrifice 3 seats, and in all likelihood the Congress could well get 63 seats as they had asked for. So is it a case where the Congress is getting what it wants, or is it a case where the DMK has tried to arm twist the UP government?
In fact, it is the other way around. It was the inclusion of PMK without consulting the Congress, which was one of the factors which upset the Congress leadership.
Right.
Because they wanted, it is very plain, Karnataka himself has said it in his statement. He was willing to finalize the deal with the Congress before going to the other allies. But Congress took its own time, and Congress, DMK also has its own compulsions. If he did not act and rope in PMK, PMK would have gone to the other side.
Right.
So his primary aim is to defeat the Jayalalitha and then consolidate his own position. But Congress had other ideas. So there was no meeting point between the two sides. So roping in PMK, I don't think is wrong. And again, another point, he waited for DMK to move to the other side before he took a stand against the Congress. 3 years after the Vijayakant leaders met Jayalalitha, he came out with a statement and saying, this is very unfair, we have been humiliated and all that. But if you look at the tenor of the statement he made even after that, we have been humiliated, we have never had such an experience before. And all that he said at the end of it was, he was not withdrawing support to the government, we are withdrawing the ministers from the government. This is because they don't want us there. It is a question of self-persuasion.
All right, it was of course a wishy-washy stance which they took when they said that they would withdraw support, but they are willing to give issue-based support, and that of course many read as a very wishy-washy statement or a stance where they meant to keep the cake and eat the cake too. Would you think that by the time they make up, which perhaps will take, let's say, 24 hours from now, even if there is going to be a make-up, would you think that it's still going to be difficult for the alliance to go on, considering the cadre and the man who's right down there trying to be a cadre or a spokesperson or a cadre person of the DMK or the Congress would find it difficult to really gel because they really were celebrating the wake-up?
Yes, naturally there is a lot of bitterness between the two sides and there will be no coordination between the sides. In fact, this is also one of the reasons the DMK said, the Congress never has grassroots level workers, the DMK has to sweat it out for them, and at the end of it they don't even spend the money that have been allocated to them for each election, and that is one of the reasons why it is the weakest link in the chain in any election. So they don't want to give away seats which indirectly will go to Jayalalitha. This is one of the reasons advanced by the DMK.
Right, of course, and the DMK would not want to split its own vote by letting the Congress go it alone. So in all likelihood it's going to be hatred and intolerance which will of course be shadowed by diplomacy, pretense between the Congress and the DMK. Arigiri is one important person here who of course is staging that drama in New Delhi. The 6 ministers very dramatically carrying their resignation letters take a flight early morning and they're still camping. They were waiting for a signal from the boss. But Arigiri would have been happy to resign at any cost because one, of course, he wants to anyway put in his papers and look for a role down south, but also because he has been thinking that they have to break away from the Congress despite of course what the faction of the DMK thinks.
No, what I said officially is the DMK does not need the Congress. It can go to the people and try to win on the basis of its own performance.
Is that true?
On the basis of freebies and all. That is the public stand he has taken. Look at the other side. He is not very comfortable in Delhi. He wants to come down to south. But that even being a minister in Delhi does not prevent him from contesting the elections here. He can have the best of both the worlds and then take his options. Remember, it is always better to have a friendly regime at the center. Anybody who wants to come to power here.
Is it true that is it true to say that the DMK would not need the Congress and could
certainly
have
not. Certainly, Congress needs the Congress. I mean, DMK needs the Congress much more than the other way around.
Than the Congress needs the DMK.
And Congress has not done its homework also. We have to say that.
Right. Very briefly, Mr. Murari. Before we slip into a short break on this discussion, we also have Mr. K. Balakrishnan joining us live tonight from, of course, the CPM. If the DMK gets what it wants, which is to get the Congress to compromise, perhaps be a little more humble and modest while asking for constituencies, will they managed to get a formula ready from the Congress to try and say that they want the investigation agency to go
that
easy
is the road
on
that
the
has
2G
not been
scam.
denied so far, circulating, but has not been denied by the Congress, because so far they have come up to Kalanya TV. They have raided and
Yes.
questioned. The
So
next
next
in
would
line
be a
is
knock
questioning
on the door
Kanimozhi.
of the family
So
member of the
possibly the
DMK.
DMK would want the CBI to slow down the investigation, and Congress has obviously cannot do anything about it because it's monitored by the Supreme Court.
Yes.
It will have an adverse impact on the election
So I'm
process
just a
of
little
both the
curious
parties.
to know, as a common man, if it's anyway being monitored by the Supreme Court, what role does the Congress have? What can the Congress do anyway?
No, they can always have some slowdown, because they still have till March 31st, I think, to give the status report. They can always say they are still investigating.
All right,
Nobody can find
almost
out.
indicating that it is not like the BJP said once very fascinatingly, that it is the Congress Bureau of Investigation. We will of course slip into a short break now. Joining us after the break is Mr. K. Balakrishnan from the CPM.